listening, then you have to buy a product from a company like that. Maybe one more.
Okay, thank you. I'm Gabon from Computer or Film. Some words about electronic commerce.
I have this very simple point of view about the Internet. The Internet is an extension of our telecommunications system. Okay? And when anyone asks me what kind of business can I conduct on the Internet, I always think the first thought that comes to mind is, well, what kind of business do you conduct over the phone? Because it's a data communications replacement or enhancement to the telephone system. And when someone asks me the question, how are you going to make money on the Internet? I immediately think, how are you going to make money on the telephone? It's a pretty good analogy to kind of work out the confusion, because, in fact, there's not a business in this represented by anyone in this room that could exist without the telephone. Yet, I would venture not many companies represented in this room actually make money on the telephone system. If you're a telephone company, you do. If you're a software company, or you make switches or equipment for the telephone industry. Obviously, Siemens is a good example there. But most companies in the world consider the telephone an expense. So it never shows up as an income item on their income sheet. It always shows up as expense. And I think that's probably the way the Internet is going to end up being. I think that the Internet is really a means to achieve the end. The end is doing something else. It's just a means. You have to pay for the means. You might be selling, so you might have a store like Amazon.com sells a lot of books over the Internet. And there's an increasingly large number of companies who sell Internet equipment over the Internet. And so you could say they're making money on the Internet, but it's really they're using the Internet to make money. It's because it's a quick, visual, and soon to become auditory and motion-oriented visual communication system. And I think it will be essential, just as the telephone system. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yep. 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 Because there's only so many remains of life. Jim Clark, founder of Silicon Graphics, co-founder of Netscape, and the single most important commercial voice in the internet world. His views.
And they're not currently in that innovative mode. They're copiers. They don't innovate, they copy it. And that's how they built their business, right? I mean, name a product that they didn't copy. I mean, word processing they didn't invent. They didn't invent PowerPoint type presentations. So ultimately, all of these things become just too much for a company like that to do, is what I believe. If that's not true, then we might as well stop and just stop breathing. But you also develop install base of customers. You develop customer loyalty. You do all of the things. You know, there are multiple automobile vendors, and why do you buy one from another versus one from another? You buy because you have a certain amount of loyalty, huh? Because they all have the same basic equipment. They have a starter, they have the accelerator, and yet there's lots of automobile companies in the world. And I think the same is going to be true in this particular market. There's no reason for one company to dominate.
May I come back to that freeware question about Apache? I like to mention Linux. It's developing
Linux
faster.
is another perfectly nice.
Yes, it's developing faster than lots of other operating systems.
Yeah, but you see,
It's
there's
going
always a
still.
problem with these freeware.
Do you think this is a
There's
serious...
no accountability for freeware.
There are companies popping up. They are
Yes, but-
called their Red
But
Hat.
they're never going to be dominant. They can't, because people don't trust a free product.
Do you think this will be a trend? Freeware.
No, I don't think it. Of course, it's going to be with us forever.
Is there a place for a Linux in
Yes,
this world?
around the edges.
Mr. Clark, one question about the web TV and the quality that it will give. Can you give a small comment on that?
No, I don't really have a comment to say about that. It's it's a pretty limited technology at the moment.
Okay.
We regret the sound quality is not so good, also the image, but we think what Jim Clark has to say about the future of the internet and so on is important enough to cover up for the bad sound and image quality. We spoke with Jim Clark in Rome at the Focus conference of Siemens Nixdorf, where he held a speech full of Microsoft bashing, because that is what he seems to like. And the questions were put forward by a panel of judge journalists in the back room, where he had some time for us. The situation was quite improvised, so again, excuse for the quality of what we deliver here in video and audio.
The Mac is an important development platform for Mac applications.
If you ask me, would I prefer that not have happened? Of course, but I didn't personally go offer to. I didn't have the image that Bill Gates has as the savior, and I didn't have $150 million to put into the company. $150 million is nothing to Microsoft. It means nothing. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of their net worth.
Yeah.
So it's just a
works.
token.
It works.
No,
Just
it's
gives
not
money.
going to work. I don't think
You
it
buy
will
as well.
it won't make any difference to Apple. Apple's success will not depend on that at all.
No, but your success.
No, well, in fact, I mean, I support Apple, but ask yourself how much new sales Apple represents to the business customer of the world, and how many of the apples that do get sold are actually connected to the network. And we still have products that run on the Macintosh, and I would argue will still be the most popular products on the Macintosh. I mean, you have to talk to Steve Jobs to figure out why he wanted to do that. I think he mainly is trying to save
Did
Apple.
you speak with Steve Jobs about the subject?
No. I know him. I know him pretty well, but I wasn't aware that he was going to do that. Neither was Jim Barksdale or anyone else. The actual impact it has on Netscape is nil, zip, except from a PR point of view. That's the only impact. But it's really just a question amongst people like you, really, or in the public press business, because in actual bottom line difference to our revenues, it has zero impact. And probably has zero impact on Apple in bottom line impact on their revenues. Because Microsoft is a company that has systematically killed Apple. How? First they made Word and they made all of their products run on Apple because Apple had a significant install base. But at some point, Microsoft viewed Apple as a competitor. And Apple wasn't being cooperative. So Microsoft made Word 6.0. You remember that? You ever use a Mac? Remember Word 6.0? It ran like molasses, right? It didn't work. Guess what? Yeah, but Word 6 was a disaster. One of the reasons I switched to the PC was because I could not stay compatible with the rest of the desktop world by using Word 4.0, which is the one I wanted to use on the PC, on the Macintosh, because it was the only one that ran effectively. So Microsoft burdened Word 6 and made it not work well. And I would argue, on purpose, in order to cause people to move away from the Mac. But then eventually Bill Gates began to worry, gee, maybe I am going to be perceived to be the monopoly that I am. So I need to try to keep Apple alive and make it appear that I'm a nice guy, because everyone thinks I'm Darth Vader.
Okay.
In fact, he's still Darth Vader.
Microsoft is not only trying to kill Apple, it's trying to kill you, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very smart move to give away web service for free. You commented rather bitterly in public about that politics.
About what?
That they give
Web
away.
servers?
Yeah.
I didn't say anything about the web server.
They have price politics, giving away things for free.
They can give away anything they want for free, but they can't give away everything that we do for free, because they can't keep up with what we do at the rate that we do it. And ultimately, Microsoft has lots of enemies. You have to admit that. Oracle is their enemy. IBM is their enemy. They have lots of enemies in the world. And now they're making enemies with all of the media companies by starting like CNN, companies like this are not their friends. You see, they're making enemies in the media world, and by the nature of what they do, in order to try to get bigger, they make more enemies. All of those people who are Microsoft's enemies are our friends. And that means that we have customers.
That's also a thing which is only important for us and for people in the IT business, but everyone buys, in business, everyone buys the products.
You buy Microsoft products.
Nobody
That's right.
cares about fights between Larry Ellison and Bill Gates.
No.
They just buy the products.
That's right.
Bill Gates and Larry Ellison.
That's right. And the same is true.
They often say, we don't like Microsoft, but we have to buy their products because it's a company strategy.
No, it's not a company strategy, it's a company necessity. If a company wants to use a word processor, they have to buy from Microsoft because they own the word processing business now.
There is at least one alternative.
Now, of course, there are others, but I mean, there's a problem with compatibility of the documents, and there's too much of a hassle associated with not using Microsoft products when they already have 95% market share. Yeah? Mm-hmm. You have to agree. I mean, my company uses Microsoft products. We have to be compatible with the rest of the world. But in the networking area, where Microsoft has not established dominance, we're not forced to, nor is any other company. And when companies do have a viable choice, probably even you, if you have a viable choice, would prefer to use a product that enables the world to keep one monopoly from developing. So in the case of Netscape, we just continue to innovate in areas where we can and improve. And then Microsoft copies, but if they're always 6 months behind, let me tell you, if all you ever do is copy, you have to stay behind.
That's true. But brings me back to a question I put a quarter of an hour ago. How can you ensure that your company keeps that level of creativity?
When companies grow, they develop customers, and in developing customers, you develop a certain connection to your customer. No product Microsoft creates is always identical to the one we create. You see, why do companies stay with Oracle? Why do they stay with Informix?
Yeah.
The reason is you make an investment in a certain way of doing things, and it's more difficult to change.
AMD was copying for years now, and it dealt a severe blow to Intel. And Microsoft undeniably has more capacities to innovate than AMD had, I think. So you are in danger. And don't you risk to become a niche player, always looking for a new niche in the networking world?
Our main objective is to get customers and keep them. And I'd argue that's the main objective of any business. We don't worry about Microsoft, we worry about the customer. And in the end, that's what wins.
They distracting you by developing similar products. Why don't you just develop a Netscape browser, which is the operating system in itself, and team up with Corel? It's a little bit futuristic, I know. Team up with Corel.
No, it's not at all.
To make Java desktop application, just say.
Why do you think Microsoft is so worried about Sun's, Java, about Netscape's platform? Why do you think they're so worried? Because, in fact, that very thing is happening. I showed a slide in there that showed there's a lot more JavaScript on the web today, and a lot more Java than there is by an order of magnitude, than there is ActiveX and the proprietary systems that Microsoft is trying to promote. And the reason that worries Microsoft is one of the ways they develop their power is that they control the application's interface. You know what APIs are? An API is the interface that allows someone to develop an application. On Windows, they control it. And I would argue that is why they have managed to put Lotus 1, 2, 3. Now everyone uses Excel, right? It's no longer why? Because they were able to make the API for Windows. They use things underneath that API and only expose the parts of that API that they feel like exposing. And they keep other proprietary parts because they own everything below it. They keep those proprietary parts.
So they will ultimately make a better browser than you
No,
can do.
no,
Because
that isn't true.
Of that reason.
Because the APIs are no longer dependent on Windows, you see. The Java APIs do not depend on Microsoft. So we've created a new layer, and that's why they're so threatened. Without control of the API layer, they realize they don't control the world. And that's why they're so threatened. That's why they're so upset. That's why they're trying so hard to make ActiveX accepted. That's why they're trying to make COM accepted. They want to control those APIs, and they will not. I guarantee you 100%.
Is that the reason you make a browser in Java?
Yes, that's right. We're making it independent.
Will that work?
Yes, it will work.
Yes. The Java products I have seen so far.
No. We have a Java compiler now that will give you performance of about 80% of a C++ compiler. Well, that's not quite 100%, but it's getting there. And so, yeah, Java is going to be the language of the future. There's no question about it. Even Microsoft acknowledges that. You notice recently, they and Intel wrote a letter to Sun saying, you should give it to the public. Why? So that they can take control of it. That's why. Microsoft wants to control it, and they don't control it. The only way they can control it is to add their own proprietary enhancements and get the world to use them. Because once the world starts using those proprietary APIs in Java, they then have the same control to have today. But you see, the people in the development world, computer world, like IBM and ourselves and Sun and Silicon Graphics and all the non-PC companies, know that they cannot let Microsoft control these APIs. And so that's why the 100% pure Java consortium exists. It's to keep Microsoft honest. Because when the world is a level playing field, guess what? You end up having multiple vendors. What a nice thing. And guess what multiple vendors do? They keep costs down. I 100% guarantee Windows 95 is not worth $125 a copy. It cannot be. The reason Microsoft gets that exorbitant price is because they own it. And they have so many applications wired to it that people can't move. All right, so that's why we've created this other layer, become independent of the operating system. If you want to call that new thing an operating system, be my guest. It's not exactly. It's a new platform, is what I call it. A new platform for applications development. It's operating system independent. In the past, the operating system was closely tied to the APIs. Yeah? APIs were to the operating system. We've created an API layer that's portable across different machines.
Still, I don't see any applications. I
You don't?
like big, like work.
Oh, you don't know? Okay,
processes,
not
that's
exactly.
it.
But the whole world of the World Wide Web is an application. Probably the largest application in the world.
But simple office applications.
They're
people
coming.
need every day. in
They're
the
coming.
work.
They're coming.
When?
Well, they'll be here eventually. And by the way, is it necessary that you have a new word processor? Would you use one if you had it?
I'm not very pleased with the one I use now. It's
No,
just
neither am
Microsoft.
I. It's got too much features.
So why doesn't anybody make a better one for me?
Well,
In Java
it's
or
a
not?
bit, you might call it a bit suicidal. It's sort of 95 to 97% of the people who use word processors in the world use one. In order to create something that displaces that, it's going to be difficult. I mean, I think they're built. Microsoft has guaranteed a future in the Office applications area just on those three things. I think PowerPoint will be the first thing to go. I think a web-based web is almost there now to replace something like PowerPoint. So I think that'll happen, but I think it'll be a long time before word processing is replaced. I think the next thing that will go will be the spreadsheet. You will want a more network-friendly spreadsheet that isn't burdened by all of the, some would argue, junk that's in Excel. Microsoft would like for you to believe you need all that junk, but, and maybe it's not junk, maybe it's all good features, but how much of it do you use? 3%?
Giving away the navigator for free, you named it yourself a good management.
It's a great marketing tool.
technique.
It was a marketing
Would you agree that maybe OS 2 Warp given away for free would have been a product that could have
Warp?
Warp, the operating system tool from IBM? Would
If-
that have been a marketing trick to?
Yeah, but you see, it took, I mean, IBM, almost by definition, cannot think out of the box, right? Okay, IBM's a great company, but it's a big, cumbersome company with bureaucracy. And the only reason Netscape is able to do that is because of a madman like me. But everyone told me I was nuts.
Why is it that this focus here gives the feeling that we are settling for a heterogeneous world and all this Java hype about homogeneous computer world is fading away right now? It's definitely a feeling you get when you listen to
I'm
the
not sure what
speakers.
you're saying. I misunderstood your comment.
There's a world with different operating systems and different platforms going on for years and years. That is what you hear here.
That's what I agree. And Java acknowledges that. Windows does not. Microsoft's products generally, with exception recently only caused by us, in general, Microsoft has said, we want you to use these products and we will take care of you. And by the way, they're all Microsoft products. And, oh, by the way, you have to use Windows, or Windows NT or Windows 95 if you're going to do this. Windows NT can solve your server needs, your client or desktop needs solved by Windows 95, etc. And it is a very powerful world, but it isn't the whole world. And I always want to be able to have this thing be able to talk to an Ericsson phone.
Mr. Clark,
Yeah.
how much are you going to allow other companies that come up with applications that work with Netscape or under a level of it to live?
We don't have any control. I don't know what you mean to live. You mean, are we
Well,
going to...
you feel that Microsoft is trying to push you out of the market. Suppose there's a competitor or someone who brings in an application that works with your stuff. What would you do? Would you act the same as Microsoft, or would you...
Yeah, I don't think it's irrational business behavior.
Just think it won't work.
Well, no. Look, business is a certain kind of economic warfare. So, well, it is. You know it is. I mean, you got competition, right? Competition. If you let your competitors take the upper hand, you're going to lose revenues, and that means you shrink, and you have to get rid of employees, and there's all kinds of ill effects come from that. So it's pretty normal business behavior to try to stamp out the competition.
So tomorrow someone comes with a program that does a better, how do you call it, bookmark thing within your environment. What would you do? Would you fight it by, would you do the same as Microsoft?
Well, it depends. A lot. I'm not sure what you mean, but
Just your attitude towards new people in the market that do the same as...
well, I'll give you an example. Real Audio is a company that's doing very well. And you could argue, well, why didn't you, Netscape, create your own audio standard and promote it? Because we can't do everything. We have to, I mean, there are people who are specialists and do a better job at building certain things, and we buy from them, right? We have to approach the broader problem and pursue our own little mission. Now, if a company comes in and tries to offer a better browser, yeah, we're going to react. We're going to react and try to keep them from it. We're going to try to figure out what they did and incorporate it in our own. That's normal business behavior. I don't see anything wrong with that. And I'm not faulting Microsoft for trying to do what they're trying to do. I'm just saying they can't possibly control the world. There is nothing wrong with having multiple vendors in a world. We're not trying to become the only vendor. We just want to be one. We just want to be one of the vendors. That means we have to fight a bigger battle with Microsoft because they want to be the only vendor. So, but that's a bad philosophy. Trying to be the only vendor is not going to work. It's happened in our lifetimes in real warfare and didn't work. It's happened Napoleon and it didn't work. And in a business warfare sense, it's happened with Microsoft and it's not going to work.
How many years?
Well, on the whole, they cannot own the entire telecommunications and software world. They just simply cannot do it. I do not fundamentally, philosophically believe it's possible. Because there are always people like myself or other people who are willing to stand up to that and compete with it. And ultimately, we're going to get some customers. And as we do, if they continue to behave, they, meaning Microsoft, continue to behave in a monopolistic way, people react. In some situations, you don't have a choice. You're already using word processor. I cede that market to Microsoft. I ain't going to try to build a word processor.
One last question. In your worst dreams, is there a scenario that you wake up in the middle of the night that the internet and browsing is not the thing that you do?
No, of course not. Because the internet is here to stay. It's not only that, it's the most dramatically growing technology area ever. And I've been in technology for 30 years, and it's the most dramatically growing because it is the communication system of the future.
I saw that chart of yours with the other things were hardware things. Radio sets, TV sets, and cables also.
Well, no, wait a second. This requires the
people
PCs
have a
there.
PC and they just have to look up to the network.
Yeah.
That's another thing that you think so?
Well, I don't know,
That's
but
not very fair.
no, that
when
isn't. No,
internet
yeah,
was
no, wait.
something you have to buy
The internet
yourself.
is much more than a connection for PCs. The internet is going to be the connection by which you talk. It's going to be the connection by which you get television.
The other things were expensive objects you had to buy.
No, maybe you don't like the chart.
No, I didn't like it because the other
I didn't
things were
create the
hardware.
chart. I thought it was kind of cool, though. No, it communicates something. Things are moving fast in this era of communications, data communications. And, I mean, it is a big marketplace. It's what, almost everything that you do from a communications point of view today, voicemail, anything that you do is going to be changed by this internet. And
Do you know Gartner's hype index? Like this? Here the hype starts, early adapters come in, hype is at its top, goes down. According to Gartner, we're somewhere here. So you see, the early
okay,
adapters.
you watch for the downside. I'm going to watch for the upside.
But in this stage, a lot of work. In this stage, a lot of work have to be done in networks, in ADSL connections.
But if you think about it, data communications has been around for a long time. Novell in some sense, Novell should have been the company to see this, but they were occupied trying to take on Microsoft directly, and the internet was happening all around them, and we happened to realize it. By the way, we didn't set out to go after Novell's market. We didn't at all. We just said, there's a new market emerging. It's based on some standard technology. By the way, it has to do with communications. The first example, or first application, is the web. There's probably some others. Email also existed, but maybe there's a way you can leverage. Bear in mind, even 2 years ago, there was at least 5 or 6 different email systems. Guess what? They're all going away. They're all consolidating, all based on the web protocol. I mean, the internet email protocols. Why? Because you want to be able to interoperate email. It's a communications product. If I have to have a Windows 95 system in order to send you email on a Windows 95 system, I mean, what kind of communications world is that? And so it's totally logical that it be multi-platform.
But the other three
That's where the
things
internet
you
went.
showed in the chart are mass mediums. They are not. Everyone has a TV set, except me. And look, it's an entertainment medium, mass medium. The internet isn't, because it's just not entertaining enough.
Well, that's true.
And
that's
for that
changing.
you need more equipment, you need bandwidth.
That's right.
It's still,
It's coming.
you know,
It'll
when
come
I
over the
show
next
the
10
internet
years.
to my mother,
By the way,
she's not very impressed.
that's
yeah?
why I don't think it's a consumer medium. You notice where all my focus is. It's on the enterprise, on the
Yeah.
business. Because today, businesses have control over their telecommunications networks. I can build within my company multiple 100 megabit networks to satisfy, if I have that need. And as a company, almost any company over 2,000 employees or 1,000 employees now has at least a T1 line connecting them to the internet. Well, homes don't, and it'll be a long time before they do, which is why I don't think all of this focus by Bill Gates and Larry Ellison on the home is going to lead to anything. I mean, in my opinion, let me not say anything about their revenues, but I think these big companies who are focusing on the consumer market, they better be sure that they have a good business market strategy, because the consumer market's going to be a long time in developing. Because of just the things you say, you've got so much infrastructure to put in place before people have enough bandwidth that it's interesting. And that's true. I don't do it from a consumer point of view. The only reason I get on the net is from a business point of view, and I think it'll be a long time before the internet is a real consumer system.
Do you imply that the ideas of video distribution through the net, where web TV and all those things are coming in, are off the mark?
Yeah. I mean, they're okay. They're a small little bit of the market, and I kind of understand why Microsoft is worried. See, Microsoft, we're working closely with a company called At Home Corporation. Mm-hmm. Well, At Home is in the business of connecting consumers, and we're real keen that they use our products. But more important here is that At Home is a high bandwidth system through the cable network in the United States that they can deliver very high bandwidth two-way communications. If they start getting consumers to use it, consumers are going to be much more interested in the high bandwidth capability than they are going to be in the telephone system, because the telephone system is too limited. Modems at 28 kilobits are pretty boring when it comes to consumer content. So the real opportunity for consumer content comes with high bandwidth. Well, Microsoft is sort of obsessed with the consumer idea, and as a consequence, they're very upset that we have this close relationship with At Home Corporation and Telecommunications, TCI.
I noticed that Windows 98 has less of a browser direction than it had before, the last beta. It feels Microsoft is kind of veering off a little bit from their browser thing for the average desktop.
Yeah.
And they're going more towards this video with their digital video plans and stuff like that.
Well, that's fine. That's the consumer focus, and that's where they got to be if they're going to be focused on the consumer, because the consumer is not going to sit there and look at boring web pages.
Tot zover Jim Clark. En die laatste opmerking is toch wel heel belangrijk. The consumer is not gonna look at boring web pages. Eigenlijk zegt hij, ook in dit hele gesprek, de end-user markt, tenzij je heel veel bandbreedte kunt geven, is niet interessant. Het gaat ons om de zakelijke gebruiker. Nou, dat is misschien heel interessant toch wel voor de politici in Nederland die denken dat we allemaal aan het web en het net moeten. Hij zal natuurlijk niet nalaten